improve existing copy, and shorten or lengthen text to fit the space. But that's just the beginning. Generate new site sections, including relevant copy, images, and suggested section layouts. Simply scan the website for SEO issues. See all recommendations in one place. With just one click, easily add meta titles, description, and more to all site pages. Entire sites optimized in seconds. You can even add alt text to all of a site's images in one place. Launch sites in no time and deliver better client results with the power of AI. Build faster, better, and smarter with Duda.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Itai Sadan, CEO of Duda, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on today's webinar. We're going to be talking about one of the most pressing challenges and opportunities for agencies today, navigating the rapidly evolving landscape of search in the age of AI. Search is no longer just about Google, and it's certainly no longer about figuring out one algorithm. It's maybe about figuring out and chasing multiple algorithms. AI-driven platforms are reshaping how customers find businesses, making it harder to find businesses, making visibility harder to maintain. Agencies that effectively adapt to this fragmented search environment will help their clients stay ahead and win. That's exactly what we will be exploring today. We'll discuss how AI-driven search is changing user behavior, the role of multi-platform content strategies in a fragmented world, and practical ways agencies can pivot to stay ahead. With me on this webinar, I want to welcome Christian Ward, a good friend and colleague for a long time. Christian Ward is the Executive Vice President and Chief Data Officer at Yext. Christian focuses on helping Yext clients identify value and structure their knowledge graphs to maximize their data value. Ward is the co-author of the Amazon top release Data Leverage, Unlocking the Surprising Growth Potential of Data Partnerships, and has developed and executed hundreds of data partnerships around the world, from small entrepreneurial firms to the world's largest data companies. Ward has served as Chief Data Officer at Source Media, Chief Data Officer of Info Group, and Global Head of Content Innovation at Thomson Reuters, amongst many other roles. Hi, Christian. Glad to have you on our webinar today.
Thank you. How are you? Good to see you, Itai.
I'm good. I'm super excited about this topic. Obviously, everybody's talking about AI. There's constant changes happening. And I think this specific topic that we're going to dive into today about fragmentation of search and helping small businesses get found in this world is extremely important. Maybe for the first time, in decades, Google is standing to be disrupted by some of these new technologies coming in. And I think everybody around, including me and many others, are asking, what should we do? So I'll hand it over to you to hear about, you obviously have an amazing viewpoint on this topic. And we'll start with a couple of slides, you taking us through it, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So folks on the line, feel free to ask questions. I'll pick and choose questions, and Christian and I can answer those towards the end of the session. So let's hit it off.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Itai, and thank you to your whole team for setting this up. It's a great opportunity. And look, I think you said it perfectly. This is probably one of the most dynamic times we have seen in digital marketing, certainly from the agencies that deal with smaller businesses. You kind of take a step back and go, look, the game has been Google for a really long time. And what's happening? And so we're going to focus on a lot of topics today. But initially, I want to start with fragmentation and where should we focus? And it's so important because I think generally most of the agencies that you work with, we work with, they only have limited bandwidth, and we know small business owners have this much bandwidth to actually think about their marketing. That's why they engage with our companies, is to help them. So what can we learn about what's happening today, and what does it mean for where we're headed? And so we're going to start with this concept of fragmentation. And in the topics that we go through, again, if there are any questions, throw them in the chat. We're looking forward to having a Q&A at the end of this as well. So let's start with search fragmentation. And what do I mean by that? Well, classically speaking, many people may not realize this. Yext was founded in around 2009. And it's because the iPhone caused the first fragmentation since the Yellow Page books, where the algorithm back then was alphabetical. But once we had the iPhone, you had MapQuest, Apple, Google Maps, NavMe. There were like all these apps. And it caused this problem of fragmenting data, and everyone tried to solve it. Yext was one of the companies, and we've been partners of yours for a very long time on how do you fix that everywhere? Well, this is the first time that we've really seen this massive new fragmentation set. Almost every day, probably by the time we finish this webinar, there's a new AI tool that's come out that's interesting or doing something amazing. But if you were to look at it through time, it sort of looks like this, which is, there were a lot of search engines, and it all, as you said, over the last 15, 20 years, it sort of coalesced at Google. And so getting Google right and getting the data that fed Google right is really critical. It's always been critical. But now we're looking ahead, and we're sort of on this curve where Google and others are building out these new AI conversational interfaces. And I think for a lot of businesses, they need to think about, is this different? How do I prepare for this? Is this an opportunity? And the other thing to consider as agencies is, if it's different, what's different about it? How can I track it? And how do I see that I'm gaining? Because one thing that we all have to get really comfortable with is, in the ad-supported market that Google dominates, they are incentivized to tell you some of the data, like keywords and things, so you can target where your ads go. But in the AI conversational space, not much data is going to come out of that data space. It's much harder to understand where are you doing well or not. And so it's really critical for us to understand all the possibilities. And we're going to go through those in detail today. But just some quick news, about a year and a half ago, we were in market talking a lot about how search was fragmenting. In February of last year, so just over a year ago, Gartner put out this report saying 25% of all search was going to disappear from Google, and it was going to go to these other platforms. Now, to be fair, Gartner likes to say both ends of the spectrum. They like getting people riled up. But actually, we found at Yext that it happened twice as fast as this, that the actual search traffic has declined, but that doesn't mean people are searching less. I would argue people are searching more. It's that the engagement level doesn't happen all inside of Google. As we like to say, there's this thing in everybody's brain that makes a decision between exploring and exploiting, meaning taking an action for your benefit. The exploring is starting to fragment, but a lot of people still go back to Google to schedule an appointment, to go to your website, or to click to drive to your place. So that's the good news. But if you look at how fast this is moving, so OpenAI dropped that you have to sign in for Search GPT, which is a big deal. So now they're fully competing as a search engine with Google. If you haven't followed, and I know a lot of people have a lot of political concepts around Twitter or X, but one thing that they just did, their Grok-free model, please go try it. It takes all the real-time feeds, which the other models really don't do yet. It takes real-time social content as a signal and puts that into its responses. It's pretty amazing. Following on that, you've probably seen all the new deep research tools. So in the past, a lot of people have said, well, it got it wrong. The data's wrong. It hallucinated. A lot of that is going away. These tools are getting very, very good at actually citing the right sources. And deep research was a big step in that direction. You also have seen, I'm not sure if everybody has, but AI mode. I actually got access to this morning, and I've been playing with it. It's fascinating. As we talk through this, I don't want anyone to get the impression I'm not pro Google in terms of where the world is going. They have all the data. They have all the scientists. They can absolutely compete here. I just think it's going to be a very tough interim period when the ad-supported model might have to change to more of an offers or deals or engagement model. But that being said, they're launching their AI mode, which is a full conversational search experience. And it's quite good in my initial testing. Now, going through, I thought this was just kind of a funny slide, and I think your agencies will particularly like this. This is a slide from Davos this year. And what makes it funny for me is all of you have seen this massive focus on fragmentation. Like, you've been living and breathing this for probably 2 years of what's going to happen. But to see it on the main stage at Davos, where all the world's top leaders are looking at the effect or the impact on this, this is a big deal. You're talking about a complete revisit or refactoring of how people engage with brands, businesses, from the largest to the local deli on the street corner. So let's go into adoption. Now, adoption from a time versus volume, I bring this up because there's a lot of people out there that are sort of naysaying adoption, or it's not being adopted, or it's not that big of a deal. And I want to really be cautious here. The way that they're doing this is people typically look at search volume. So how many searches are on Google versus how many searches are on ChatGPT or DuckDuckGo. And so about 6 months ago, a report came out that said, look, ChatGPT is so tiny in terms of the actual number of searches. But what you'll find is that was 6 months ago, and it only compared it against the largest search engines in the world. Then last week, there was a new study that came out, and the pie got a little bigger. But it's not just getting bigger because of ChatGPT. It's getting bigger because I think everyone's realizing this isn't about just the AI model fighting against Google. This is that all the platforms are getting better. For example, using Grok inside of X is phenomenal as a search tool, whereas the classic search inside of X or Twitter has been one of the worst search experiences that ever was created. It's just terrible. And so what's happening is, as platforms like YouTube and LinkedIn and others add these new search capabilities, you're going to spend less time hunting in Google and more time in direct dialogue with these platforms. In fact, I would argue in the next 6 months, as we see these tools enabled at all these other platforms, you're going to see a pie chart that looks a lot more like this. Now, when we look at this, I want to point out, in the search volume scenario, many of us and many of your professional agencies on this call are probably familiar with what we've seen, where search has kind of declined a little bit in quality over the last several years, both in the responses and the ad experience. One of the areas here is you shouldn't use search volume as a metric for studying AI adoption. And it's because realistically, if it's getting worse, people have to search more times to try and find what they were looking for. In fact, measuring AI adoption by volume of search is a lot like measuring a baseball player by the number of swings they take at bat. It's not the way to do it. You really want to look at how many hits or on base are they getting. And that's what a search should be measured on. Is does it advance you? In fact, I would say if all of you look honestly at your phone or your device and you look at time spent on device where it has the applications, go back in time if you can, and you'll see something like this. About a year ago, the AI apps, so the ones that were really using AI, maybe had a little sliver. About 6 months ago, that got bigger. A month ago, it's even bigger. And now it's probably much larger than you even realize. Not saying all of the customers or the SMBs are using it to this level, but I am saying that there's something like a 70+% adoption rate at most businesses, and it's much higher in the digital marketing space. And if we look at this, what I'm more arguing for is AI adoption. Every moment you're in AI, you are not in classic search. Every moment. So if you think about it as time, in other words, the technology adoption is about saving time. It's not about any of the tools. Look, even the plow and the printing press. Technology is always about saving time so humans can scale. And there's a lot more time being saved with AI, I would argue, than we're giving it credit for in just measuring search volume. So let's dive into what is going to happen and how to prepare for it. When you think about AI and search, it's really helpful to frame every one of your clients' needs. So let's say a small business or a multi-location business. You want to focus on these three core concepts. There are branded questions versus unbranded. That's sort of like, where is the closest Apple store? That's a branded question. Where is the closest computer store is not branded. You also want to think about objective and subjective questions. What time does the restaurant open versus is this a good restaurant? One is an objective question. One is a subjective question. I'm going to explain why these are so critical in your plan. The last is simple versus complex. And this is where AI really steps in, right? What is the address for a dentist is a very simple question. But why does my dentist use Invisalign over SureSmile is actually quite complex. There's probably an enormous amount of blogging about why people do that. Sorry, I have teenage kids, so they try to sell me everything in terms of fixing teeth. So when you look at this, if you were to look at these as categories, every query whether it's AI or search, is based on this structure. So if I were to look at branded, objective, simple question, what time does the Apple store open in Chelsea Market? That's the question. You can see it's about Apple. It's simple. It's just about a location, and it's objective. No one needs an opinion here. Now, if I switch it to subjective, is Catch Steak a restaurant near Chelsea Market? Now it's a subjective question. If I changed to unbranded, I would change that same question to what's a good restaurant for a business dinner near Chelsea Market? As you see, the type of question changes based on where the pill is. And lastly, if I do something like an unbranded, subjective, complex question, who is a great financial advisor in Midtown that specializes in family trusts? That is a complex question. Now, the AI is coming for all the complex questions. Like that's where Gemini fires off its AI overviews. It's why people are going to AI, because it's such a better use of your time for these complex questions. But if you look at where AI is going, complexity often triggers two things. The first we call prompt inversion, and the second is memory. So if I ask that same question again, who is a great financial advisor Midtown that specializes in family trusts? The first thing the AI does is it inverts the prompt, meaning instead of you prompting it, it prompts you. And it says, well, let me ask you first, is proximity to you or their firm or their background educationally, what's important to you? As it does that, it's actually refining your search for information, even if you don't know what to ask yourself. And so when that happens, the inversion, if I say, nah, doesn't matter to me if they're close, but it would be kind of cool if they went to the University of Florida or they were an alumni like I am. And the memory, you'll see this, it says memory updated. ChatGPT does this, Gemini does this, and look for all the other ones to do this. The response comes back like this, where it says, well, great. Based on that, let me give you some advisors that have a connection to the University of Florida. But what happens is it says memory updated. And if you go into the AI, it will literally say, Christian is always interested in doing work with people that went to the University of Florida. Now, that's not the best reason to pick your financial advisor, but people make decisions for very odd reasons. And the memory changes search. Why? Because complexity will often first invert the prompt, but memory actually fragments search rankings. Look, you've all lived in this world with the same company choosing how things rank by a secret algorithm for 15, 20 years. What's about to happen is every time I have a memory and ask a question that memory is tangential to, it's going to change the rankings. So now if I go into my ChatGPT and I ask it, hey, I'm looking for a new, whatever, it doesn't matter what the product is, a dentist, it will actually rank people that went to the University of Florida's dental program because it knows it's important to me. You can change memories, but the important thing you all have to think about is you should be telling your customers, put a sticker in your front window. Remember to tell your AI assistant that you love our brand, because it's going to change the rankings and it can build loyalty throughout the process. So now, if we stick on the same path, do you know that you can actually ask the AI what citations or sources of data it uses for each type of question? So I'm going to stick with the financial advisor first. I went to ChatGPT, typed in, what types of citations will you provide for an unbranded, objective, complex question? Okay. Now it comes back and it literally says government and regulatory agencies. You can't not do that. That has to happen anyway. But then it talks about professional industry associations. It talks about reputable independent firms that might measure you. It talks about educational resources. These are the places that for that type of question, it's the source for the AI to answer. Why does that matter? Well, let's continue and you'll see. If I do an unbranded, subjective, simple question, which is something like about a dinner place, look what it brings back. It brings back user review sites because it's subjective. It brings back local recommendations, so like blog posts or even on your website. It can bring back, if you have recommendations as a business, it brings back social media content, and it will also bring back personal experience. This is fascinating, right? Because if I want a target to show up more in either ChatGPT or any of these systems, I need to think about what flavors of citation should I be building. So this one is the last example, but if I go back to the most basic, the branded, objective, simple question, it literally about any business, look at what it says. It says, well, something I think Duda absolutely agrees with. It says the most authoritative source is the official business website. Get from it, look at the fourth bullet, Also, the structured data, the schema markup, the knowledge graphs. I didn't prime this. This is me just talking to ChatGPT and getting back. The other thing it does is it looks at verified directory listings like Google Business Profile, Yelp. Actually, it lists Yext, which is kind of funny. But when you go through this, all of this information or location data like Google Maps, Apple Maps, it's using these, but it uses different citations for different structures. So that's the process by which it's learning. Now, citations have always been really important for classic search. They're never not going to be. They're increasing. But search and AI are going to use the same 4 sources of things, and they're going to measure them the same way that Google has for years, which is what is the source of the content and the data? How consistent is it? Am I seeing the same stuff everywhere? How frequently is it updated? And what's the depth of the data? By the way, this actually goes back to a 1996 academic theory called information quality theory, where we can look at any data and understand how much should I trust this data based on the quality of the data, where it measures these exact types of things. So let's jump into what are the 4 signals? Well, you really can control about 4 different things. At Yext, we do it all from a centralized knowledge graph, but think of a knowledge graph as any database. And what you're trying to do with your database, and the first thing and how we got in this business, is we first updated the data that goes direct into these systems. So Google, Bing, Apple, Amazon, ChatGPT, we feed data directly through a product called listings. But that's not where you stop. That's one signal. The next signal, and what we partner with Duda for years on, is they power the websites. You've got to make sure the same signal you're putting in your Google profile is the same signal you're putting in your website. And you can improve the website all the time. In fact, that preview video you had, Itai, is amazing. It's sort of like it can generate off of knowledge more content. It can listen and you can advise it to do more. You just want to make sure that it's all structured as much as possible to feed the large language models. On top of that, you got to look at reviews. We see reviews as one of the absolute biggest gaping hole in how people deal with doing better in search. Now, it really only focuses on subjective questions, but a lot of times consumers conflate finding a place and a subjective question, meaning they put together, I want a good dentist, not just a dentist. So you really got to focus on those reviews. And then the last is social. Social is a phenomenal tool. But as I mentioned earlier, like X or Twitter, pushing data in real time, social is one of these beautiful systems where I would offer to everyone, there is no case where real-time data doesn't beat indexed stale data. In other words, even if you're, my 18-year-old challenged me, she's like, well, what about what is photosynthesis? That doesn't need to be real time. It's the same. I said, sweetheart, if they discovered how to do photosynthesis in the last 6 minutes, in a way that it accelerates going to Mars. Would you want to know about that when you asked about photosynthesis? She's like, yes, of course. It's always better to have real-time knowledge. And social is a great way to push that data out. Lastly, I just wanted to throw out there that in the last couple of weeks, Yext announced that we have launched a platform called Scout. And Scout, and you can sign up for the wait list. But the idea here is in all 4 of those quadrants, your website, your listings, your social, and your reviews, we are now analyzing and at the local level. So for every business, we're analyzing over 2 billion data points to understand what are you doing that your competition is not, and the people that are beating you in search results and AI, what are they doing across the 4 channels that you're not? And so it's a way for us to optimize on an ongoing basis those 4 signals for the different types of citations that are powering all of these AI responses. So you can learn more about that at the URL here. And also, I'd love to connect with anybody on LinkedIn. I'm constantly writing and pushing information about AI, its adoption, and where we all need to be thinking about going. So with that, I can stop my share and bring Itai back on for some additional conversation.
Christian, thanks for that. Truly fascinating. I think you can also see from the feedback from the audience, like great insights into this topic. And really, I think it correlates very much with what I want to show as well, a little bit of the data that Duda has been collecting. So moving kind of to, I think, kind of the core of the meat of what we're seeing in data. And this is something that we've just kind of started tracking in the last couple of months. But this shows you the amount of traffic that Duda is getting from different AI chat platforms. And obviously you can see ChatGPT by far exceeding all the other tools, and it's growing very, very quickly. So this is traffic coming from ChatGPT to all the sites in Duda. Still, I have to caveat it. It's relatively small compared to Google, very much like what you showed in that pie chart, but it's growing. And if ChatGPT continues to grow in this space, it's going to be really interesting, right? This is where as it becomes bigger, agencies and businesses need to figure out, how do I put these businesses that, when people are asking questions about local services, local businesses, these businesses appear in the sources, the citations that these tools have. So I think it's still early days, but it is really interesting, and the pace is growing at a staggering pace.
Yeah, and sticking with that, I just want to add, one of the amazing things about your platform, and I think people should focus more on this, is you have to understand a lot of the top of the funnel. So if I'm trying to find a roofer, and I can learn about 5 roofers talking to the AI that you're powering with your websites and the other channels, the beauty of that is what I think a lot of research is going to show very soon is the actual conversion rate, once they do go to your website, is going to go up. So you might see fewer impressions at any given website, but the conversion rates are going up because they're actually doing the research in the AI in the top of the funnel. But that means you've got to nail the bottom of the funnel with your website. You've got to get it right of capturing every one of those leads that you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will talk about soon, as AI develops, like, would some of these things that today, things like bookings, scheduling, all kinds of things that today you really do have to go to the website, would these things down the line, as kind of these AI tools progress, start to show up in AI, just like we can do some of these things in Google today. And by the way, I wanted to say that some of these other chat tools here that are not sending a lot of traffic, I think some of them are definitely not connected to the live web yet. So as soon as they get connected, like Grok and all of these that are like that in their last version are connected, we're going to see more traffic from these tools as well.
Absolutely.
And I think the interesting point about this traffic that we're seeing, I would say that ChatGPT is not optimized at all at this point to send traffic to these websites, right? We're really in kind of early days. If you think about the user experience in ChatGPT, it's really like prompt, I get the answers. But we see kind of early signs, kind of the seedlings of even that UI changing, right? I asked here, like, give me the best restaurants in Boulder, Colorado. And we see this map now showing, and we see kind of listings of different restaurants in Boulder, Colorado. So they have adapted, and they've done that for local questions about restaurants. And I think what we can expect is that we will see more and more of these experiences evolve, like specific experiences related to the prompts. Christian, any thoughts here on this?
Yeah. So it is early days. I know Perplexity, if people are, I see a couple questions on which models where. So ChatGPT has started putting the exploits. It's actually what you're showing right here. And they've always been good about the citations. Perplexity is not as good about the citations, but they have even more. They have where you can buy things directly through their partnerships, I think with Shopify and other platforms. So you're getting to this world where, as more exploits are taking an action, or an agent taking an action on your behalf, which is really where this goes next, this is going to become critical. So I think the more they engage, especially on the objective questions about your clients, the small businesses, the more your website provides the ability for them to engage cleanly and quickly, meaning the AI agent, the faster you'll see these exploits drive much more traffic. And my guess is it's not just more traffic. I think it's going to be higher quality traffic. It's not people browsing. It's people that have already had the browse. The AI helped them through where they're going, but now they're ready to buy or engage. And I think that's a really good opportunity.
Right. So again, these experiences that we're seeing now, like this map, this is a fraction of the searches in ChatGPT that give you this different experience. Most of the experience is really, you get the answer right away. So the amount of people who actually care and click like I did here in the screenshot and go to the sources and then go and click on those sources and get to that website, that's a very treacherous journey to do. And with that, going back to the slide I showed before, we're seeing that consistent, beautiful growth of traffic coming from these. So I think this is just going to increase over time. It really reminds me that, early days of another company, Google, right? Like I took this snapshot. I think this is like the way Google search looked at like in 1998, right? We didn't have that amount of ads yet. All these special experiences like the AI overview and all these other kind of shopping and everything else that Google today inserts into results was not there. I think that same evolution as ChatGPT and these other tools will understand the value of what they have, right? This intent, they will build better experience to kind of harvest that. And it wouldn't surprise me if down the line there would be an advertising model there as well. Maybe not.
Yeah, so I think I put an article on Adweek maybe 18 months ago where I mentioned, I think we're going to move from ads to offers. And that might sound like semantics, but it's really not. So I remember I was saying we have memory in the AI, and the AI starts getting to this point where it's like, it just knows that I like sushi, or it knows, right? Well, then what it can do is if I ask, hey, where could I go to dinner with my wife tonight? It knows, number one, what I like, but also it will have the ability to then go hit the website, the social feed, a review, or a listing. And if you have offers for, let's say, the miso soups on us or whatever it is, if that's an offer, that's perfectly positioned to sort of take the ads game up a lot. Meaning for what I'm looking for, it's had a conversation with me to know that an offer of this type will be very likely well received. So you may see less ad impressions, but again, the offers will be better in terms of conversion. So in a way, the world was going headfirst down the creepy cookie path for advertising. We all know that got out of hand. But if I am freely providing to the AI agent, whether it's yours as a brand or it's my personal AI agent, if I'm freely providing personal information so that I get better offers, now you're talking. Now you're talking about a privacy-forward approach where I'm in control and I can see good offers that are matched to me based on conversation. That's a really good opportunity.
Absolutely. So question, what is Duda doing today in order to help SMBs and agencies in this world of AEO, what we call answer engine optimization? So the good news is a lot of things are already being done for you underneath the hood in Duda. Things like we automatically generate sitemaps, server-side rendering, which helps the crawlers coming from ChatGPT and all these others to better understand content more easily, much easier than trying to understand JavaScripts and kind of client-side rendering. SSL encryption and structured data, high core web vitals, high page speed scores that our sites have. Local SEO schema. I think you mentioned it before, right? Yeah. Like things like making it more easier for these tools to get that data that might come in questions that are in prompts and things like that. Built-in FAQs and product schema. That kind of feels like a no-brainer, right? If Duda gives you the ability, and we have AI that generates the FAQ, but I would recommend that people go in there and your business, or as an agency, the business you're serving. Try to think of what are the relevant questions that people might be going in and asking ChatGPT. If it's right, it's exactly what you mentioned before, Christian, with it could be structured, it could be branded, it could be non-branded. This is an opportunity to kind of try to be proactive and try to nail these questions in advance. Streamline meta, alt tags, and content refresh, right? Again, you talked about it. Content refresh is king. Like automatically update some of that content, and we have tools to help you with that. And then two-way sync with Google Business Profile and other listings, right? This is also something that comes with the platform. And very important, that consistency, that your address, your opening hours, your business information in your website, in Google Business Profile, and in all these other listings. You want to make sure that there's consistency. And I think, right, Yext is an amazing tool to help you achieve that.
Yes. Yeah. Look, and I appreciate it. What I would say is, the age old thing of, if I was visiting you, I might say, what's the best place for us to go get, a slice of pizza for lunch or whatever it may be. If 50 people around us all said, this pizza place, here's the address, here's the phone number, here's this, they all agreed. And they all said it was the best too. So all the reviews agreed. You and I are going to be really confident going there. And if we get a coupon from social media, like, this is how it's all supposed to work, which is that structured data. Almost every one of your checklist items, if it's not directly tied to structured data, it's close. And if we're moving into a world like Andre Karpathy last night, if everyone's familiar with him, he ran AI at Tesla, and then he was at OpenAI as one of the founding members. He's just a phenomenal AI research. But last night he pointed out, 99.9% of websites need to start thinking about this structure problem, which is feeding large language models, because the agents are crawling. And I noticed you optimized for that, but that's exactly what we have to think of. It doesn't mean you won't have a website. I think you absolutely need a great website, even more so on that landing from the large language model. But we've got to first feed the structured data to the large language models to make sure that you're optimally showing up. And look, I think that's what everyone should be focused on. It sounds a little crazy. Good copy, good writing, good photos. Yes, it's very important, but that's for humans. The machines, we gotta get the machines to trust that this is a good place to drop off first, and it has nothing to do with that. And so I think we as companies, but also these agencies that work with these businesses, this can be complex to explain to a small business owner, and I recognize that. I think you all do an amazing job translating this complexity into a simpler understanding. But in the end, they just want to know they're performing better than their competition, and they want to know that they can close some more business. And so trying to distill this down, stay really focused on how to feed these models the data they need in order to be successful.
That's great. So I think this is kind of the end of the slide portion, and we'll open it up to Q&A, and just to get kind of things rolling as people, I know there's already a couple of questions that Kristen, you and I can tackle through, but I'll kick it off kind of with my, kind of first question to you. So we went through all of this, and just to make it kind of really clear and concise to folks on the call, what should small businesses and agencies do in order to ensure that they are found in this fragmented world of search?
Yep. So those four channels, I know everybody on this call are pretty familiar with them. Your website, your listings, data, or Google Business Profile, any directories, reviews, and social. The thing where I think people are missing right now is they're not keeping all those working together. So a lot of times you'll put an offer out on social media, but you didn't put it on the website, and you didn't send it out through a list. Like, there's ways to scale that signal. So think about all of this as signal processing. The best advice I can give an agency is you've got to capture more knowledge about every business. The 10 fields you need to go live on Google Business are not enough. Every AI company we talk to wants more data about your businesses. So an ideal state, and one of the things you can do, is open up Claude, ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Grok. Feed in your business name and say, what are the most common questions that anyone asks about this business? What do they need to know? And also for the location. So not just the business, but the location, because it will change your understanding of all the questions that are necessary. You can even ask it, give me branded questions, unbranded, objective, subjective. You can scale this. And so, by the way, that's a lot of what Scout does, is we actually scale to millions of questions and then aggregate to understand what is important, what's not. But you can do it as a small business. Ask the AI what it knows about you, and make sure if there's a ton of stuff it doesn't know about you, you should immediately get with Duda. You should add all that to your website. You should get it into your listings, all of that approach. But it does take a concerted effort. The other thing I would recommend for every agency here is you really got experimenting with interviewing your SMBs and then using AI to parse it into structured data that you can then feed into the website or feed it into a platform. Meaning you interview them for half an hour, just ask them, can I record this? Just use your Apple Memos. It'll give you exactly the transcript. You can hand it to a large language model and it will tell you 15 web pages and great content that you didn't know you had in a 20-minute phone call. So try to use that. Again, do it legally, make sure they know you're recording, but certainly it's worth it because it really helps the SMB get their knowledge out.
Cool. And if kind of to build on that, specifically for content on the website, as I know a lot of the folks here are controlling the content on the website, might be offering content marketing services, blog services.
Yeah.
What kind of content would you recommend to add to the website in order to help them rank better on kind of LLMs?
Yeah. So again, one of the principles should be is what do you want to be known for, and also what is your competition talking about? So one of the great things, or one of the data sets that we're now getting on literally 13 million businesses in the States, is we can see what they're all talking about across social media and their websites. That type of, you don't need that tool to do this. I'm just saying you could go to your competitors' websites, or you can even do deep research using an AI. Say, here's my main competitors locally. Go to their websites and tell me everything that they're talking about that I'm not talking about. That's the way to think about this. Is it's your agent to help you do things, but they can do that research. Once you've done that in terms of what to produce on the web, ideally, what you're trying to do is imagine the customer journey. So let's say, for example, I'm going to stick with roofers, but let's say with roofers, you've had a bunch of storms in recent area. You're using something like weather to help you predict when there's going to be more demand, when there's going to be roof leaks. You've got to start thinking about what other knowledge should be on my website that I can spoon feed with structured data, not just a blog. Blogs are great, but everyone has to realize there's this thing called compute. If you feed 900 blogs to a large language model, it has to use compute power to understand and to extract structure out of that. Don't do that. Don't force the large language model to have to think. Give it as much structured knowledge so it already knows exactly what you're all about. So take whatever you do content-wise and convert it into as much structure and put it in the page wherever possible. But that, I would say, figure out what your competition is doing, where you think you can succeed, and then make sure you structure whatever content you come up with.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that I see Thomas Bianco mentioned it, and that's when Google was asked the same question. They say, right, their answer is EEAT, right? It's about the content that it needs to be from a point of expertise. It needs to be authoritative. It needs to be trustworthy. So whatever content you put in there, make sure it adheres to that. You know, I think whatever Google is saying as this is the way that they look at content and decide what to rank applies in the same way to, to chatbots and all these other tools.
Yeah. And by the way, I've seen in the chat, and I saw it just there, can we not call it GAO, AIO, EAEAIO? Do not call it any of those. Just call it SEO. Okay. It's search experience optimization. That way we can keep all the conferences the same that you all go to. We can keep all the marketing the same. I'm on a mission. I want to keep my t-shirts because it's not search engines anymore. It's search experience. And so for us, if we can migrate, let's get the whole industry pulling that way. But I really don't want to have to rename everything.
Now you got a lot of branding guys like really pissed off because they thought that they're going to make kind of a heyday on helping all these companies rebrand.
No. Look, again, and all of our research shows this, and we're really, we're at the center. We power 2.5 million business locations all over the world. What I would tell you is this: everything that you've been doing for years to feed good data consistently, frequently, from authoritative sources, all of that is the same. It's not like there's another library of content that AI has access to that Google didn't know. It's just opening up that now there's different models using that data differently. So fragmentation is an opportunity for you to scale this. But it's not because there's a whole new science. Arguably, I'm not sure SEO is a science. It's more of you're reacting. It's more of an analytics framework. So the experience is definitely changing, and it's changing faster than I've not seen something this fast. I mean, you're I think close to my age. The reality is, when the web launched, many of you may not remember this, there were people that were like, this web thing, it's a fad. And it took many years for most businesses to get online. And there's still businesses that don't have a website. But this thing is moving at least 10x that speed in terms of how fast it's iterating. So this is not one to worry or quibble over what we're calling it. Let's keep it SEO and focus on what actually has to get done.
Okay. There's a good question here that I think we should spend a little bit of time on. And this is from Fast Water Heater Company. So the question is, AI search would seem to impact knowledge seekers, but not services. For example, plumbers near me still wants to connect with a business and their website. Christian, what's your opinion here?
Yeah, so I'll tell you this. I actually, I understand what Fast Water is asking. I would tell you this. The amount of time and money that people put into, and actually, you know, if you don't mind, I'm going to draw it really quick, which is there's sort of money, and then there's the complexity. And you can think of money as time, if time is money. Just remember, like, me doing a kitchen remodel versus an immediate, like, roof leak, like a leak in the kitchen, versus like my home is like I'm building. There's all these things where this line of complexity, they're definitely going to AI before they're talking to you about remodeling the kitchen. Yeah. But if it's someone that has an emergency plumber need, yeah, the classic search works. But please understand, I give it only 6 more months, 6 months before we stop saying classic, sort of classic or the new thing, AI versus classic search. In other words, if I'm looking for fast food for lunch and I type in like, hey, is there a Wendy's near me? That is a simple, branded, objective question. Right. That's easy. And nobody wants 9 paragraphs from an AI on why Wendy's is just down the road. They just want the answer. But Google and everyone is going to merge those two things, which is based on the type of question. It will respond the way you find most helpful. So I will tell you, I think anything in home services, anything. For example, do you know that they're going to ask, should I do a point, what is it called? The point of use for hot water heaters, like it's basically a Keurig for your hot water versus a classic hot water heater. Those questions they're asking in AI because they want to learn, and they want to learn before you come to their house to give them a bid. So if you have content that can give them confidence in that, you want to be in those conversations. And so any home services thing that is complex or has complex questions, make sure you're doing a content strategy around that complexity so you're part of the dialogue. But I tell you this, I don't think people are just going plumber. Yeah, they do, but you realize they had 15 questions before that. They're taking photos of what's going on under the sink going, hey, AI, what's going on with this? Why is this not working? That is the part where AI is way ahead of us in terms of the funnel for any SMB. So I would offer, don't assume that depending on the business type, you're going to be immune to this. Nobody's immune, and it's a big opportunity.
Christian, I kind of 100% agree with you. While you were talking, I went into ChatGPT and I looked at plumbers in Boulder, and I got kind of that similar map, similar to what I showed previously in restaurants. And you get kind of reviews of different plumbers in the vicinity. So again, just as you said, nobody's immune to it. This is a very rapidly evolving area. And I think we can assume that if people are starting to search for restaurants, they will go industry by industry. People will get used to these tools this is where they're asking questions, and maybe more research type of questions. Yes. So I think everybody needs to be prepared for this.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to oversimplify it, but I think if you think about that framework of exploring versus exploiting, back in 1950s, several decision scientists came up with that. And they're like, the human mind is kind of always in one or the other state. It's like you're exploring where to go on vacation or exploring to remodel the bathroom. But the moment you want to exploit, it's a different type of search. You're like, just schedule me an appointment. Like, you just want the answer, like you want to happen. That is very much where the difference is. I just think we won't go to different systems for that soon. It'll all just be search. It'll just be the new way we search. Like, do you all realize we're going to look back 5 years from now? Like, already my son is doing this to me where he's like, why don't you just ask ChatGPT? Why would you search that? Like, in terms of, like, the last time any of you planned a vacation, I bet you had 37 tabs open with different searches of different cities, different airlines, different, like, because it's so hard to get through all that. That is so inefficient for where this is going. And so I think we're going to look back and sort of be amazed that, you know, when we type in a search and we don't get what we're looking for, do you know who humans blame? There's a ton of academic research on this. They don't blame Google. They blame themselves. We retype things in, and that gives Google more search and more ad opportunities. That world, I think, is going away very quickly, and we'll see. We'll see if the adoption is what I'm proposing, but it's going to happen really quickly.
So with the growing amount of referral traffic coming from these different AI chatbots, this is kind of, you know, your dream list. What would you want to see from these tools in terms of helping small businesses be found? I know, for example, you know, we looked at that local map experience. I don't know, maybe having more sources or better ability to take actions on certain things.
Yeah.
What would you like to see? And if there's already some insight that you have on maybe these things are already in the works and I don't know about it.
Yeah, a great way. Sorry, I like your time, but a great way to think about it is if this is intelligence, so intelligence, and this is agency, meaning that you can take an action. Mm-hmm. There's really like 4 quadrants here, right? And basically what it is you can have a non-intelligent, an AI that can't take action. So it's no and no. That's like chatbots. No offense to everybody that's chatbots on their website, but that's like chatbots. They're so frustrating. It's so annoying because they can't do anything and they don't know anything. Like, and again, they've all gotten a lot better, but like, let's be honest, they were like glorified if-then trees when you call someone with IVR, right? They're terrible. Now, if you have agency but low intelligence, what that tends to be is, think of the Darwin Awards. Really stupid, but they'll do something for you, right? That's not good either, right? You go up here where it's very intelligent. This to me is today. Today, they're really intelligent, but they can't do much, right? And then this is where we're all going. This is the future state where they're intelligent and they can do things for us. So I want to see a two-way street for small businesses, which is the small business owner can literally manage their business by talking to an AI in their store, where they can say something like, you know, hey, AI, can you update that we're now doing this? And we're excited about it. And there's a coupon, and but we're also out of the pea soup. Like that sort of engagement where the AI then partners with Duda and with Yext and everyone else to push out these updates. I think AI can't just be about the marketing for them. It's about running the business. And I think that's very likely. You're going to see a lot of that expansion here. Marketing being one factor, but there's a lot more to come in terms of agency with intelligence. And that'll be a big push.
Great. And what do you think? Are we going to get to a place where these chatbots are able to, let's say, book my travel tickets?
Yes.
Order, you know, set an appointment for me at the dentist and so on. And, you know, how close are we to that?
Yeah. So obviously you've been able to do some of that stuff. Like you can order paper towels with an Alexa device. But what I'm not sure everyone realizes, in the next several weeks, anyone with Amazon Prime is going to have an always on AI device. That's a big change. Right now, you have to open an AI, you have to click on it, and you have to engage with it. You have to download it. You have to get an account. Okay. There's a lot there. Now people can just walk around their house and ask any question and have basically access to the world's knowledge in a conversational way. So no more of this, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. It's like no more of that. It's going to actually be much more aggressive. So I think that's another area where that's going to change quickly. I do want to address Sandra put in here. I think it's Sandra or Sandra. I'm sorry, I'm not giving great information on what to do with the website. Let me go back. I think with the website, as Itai showed earlier, this is all about expanding think of it as like surface area. the more surface area you can cover on the internet so that these robots from AI and from Google's classic search, the more surface area you have with all of the knowledge about your business, that's going to improve how you show up in these systems. So that means more pages with more structured knowledge. It's increasing that service area. Same thing with like reviews. Generate more reviews. Why? Because it increases the surface area that when an AI agent looks at you, it goes, they have a ton of reviews. They have great knowledge about what they do on their website. Their information is perfect everywhere I look on the listings. And they're pretty active in social media. And they have a coupon right now through social media. When you realize that it's about that surface area, that's where you go in and you can really see a kick up in your rankings and your mentions in both search and AI. Hopefully that was a little more helpful, but I apologize for not being
So I think what we're saying is content is still king.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Right. Structured content. I think it's going to become even more
structured content. Make sure, and obviously don't just create content for content's sake. Like I mentioned yesterday, just a few minutes ago, EEAT, right? Make sure it's coming from experience, it's authoritative, it's trustworthy. So, we're not recommending to just go out there and create, a lot of different content, but content that obviously is very relevant to that business, and content that we think that you might think that the AI chatbots are asking.
Yes. Yeah. I'll throw on there. So I often say it, and I consider myself obviously in marketing, but generally speaking, marketers have a great history of ruining everything we touch. So before anyone gets mad, just hear me out. When email came out, what did we do? We ruined it. Spam like when text messaging came out, what we do? We ruined it. Like billboards going back, 100 years. What do? We ruined the scenery on the highway by putting billboards. Marketers can't help themselves. We overdo it. And I think what EEAT and what we're saying with structured knowledge is don't try to rank for everything and use large language models to generate content that is not helpful and it's not authoritative. And this is where the penalties Google has done manually over the years. We've seen lots of helpful content update things. I don't think that's going to slow down. I think it's going to accelerate. So make sure you're really focused on what these businesses, these SMBs really do, help them know what they should do by looking at the competition, and really focus on that value added strategy, because more is not better. And large language models can produce a lot more. Like you can have 1 million pages. Don't do that, but absolutely focus on the things you should cover with your websites, your listings, your reviews, and social. And if you can do that, I think you're going to really do well.
Okay, I think we're almost nearing the end. So I'm going to put you, Christian, on the spot here with that slide that you showed with that pie chart and Google shrinking over time and, the LLMs and others. Do you think there's a real shot for really Google to lose that dominance over time? And for another tool out there like ChatGPT or something else, for the first time in decades to overtake and kind of own search?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm gonna answer it in a way that is I'm almost completely confident that the fragmentation is not only happening, it's happening faster than we think, and it will absolutely challenge Google. At the same time, I want to offer there's a difference between market share, which is a percentage, and then the actual revenue and the engagement level to getting to answers, as I was saying earlier in my discussion. I think the reality is there's absolutely this opportunity where people are going to engage more. So if the pie is growing, I don't want people to assume that means the business suffers. I think the ad model is going to go through a really tough few years. But beyond that, there's absolutely going to be AI that's based on ads. Like it's absolutely going to happen. So the effort right now is everyone's doing a land grab with these capabilities. But I think this is the single biggest challenge Google has ever faced. I think that's very, very obvious in many ways. However, I think the pie is going to grow, because the reality is if I want Google in all my devices and in my car and in my home, I'm going to talk to it more than when I'm just searching in front of my computer. And when it was Google Home and it was these other ones, they're not good enough yet. Now they're good enough where people are going to have conversations all day. So you could see a massive inflation of the actual TAM, the addressable market, but there's going to be a lot of fragmentation in that TAM. So I think that's a very good thing. I think it's good for Google. I think it's a competitive challenge, but I also think it opens up the market to a lot more opportunity.
Right. And I think let's not forget that Google has a really strong horse in this race with Gemini.
Yes.
One thing. And second, right, they still own search, and where a lot of people are going to ask these different questions, and creating the right experience of, embedding AI in there could give them a very strong leg up. So
yeah, I would not bet
against. By no way I would bet on let's say the demise of Google. And I think it's an amazing time just to see that change. And I think we also need to remember that, again, it's really early days, right? We saw the graph that I showed. A lot of these chatbots just opened themselves to search in August. We're only half a year later, and look at all this change that is happening. It's very early to pick winners. I think there's going to be companies that we don't even imagine yet that are going to be formed. Let's remember, this is a platform. On top of some of these platforms that were created in the past, like mobile, years later, you had Airbnb and X, previously Twitter, and all these other, who could have imagined back then when mobile was invented that these are the apps that are going to be, right, like billion-dollar apps. So I think there's still a lot there that could happen that we're not even imagining right now.
Yes. And I'm excited for it. I appreciate the partnership with Duda and many of the agencies that are on this call, but I would say this is a fun time. I think everyone should lean into it, enjoy it, try and focus on, really sound data practices to benefit from it. But overall, this is probably one of the most dynamic times since the internet. And I will tell you, at my age, being able to see in my lifetime 2 changes of that magnitude, like the internet and now AI, I feel very fortunate. So I appreciate the opportunity to discuss it all with you and everyone today.
Absolutely. So I think we're right up on time. Thank you, Christian. Fascinating conversation. And again, everybody here on the call will receive the link to the video. Thank you all for attending, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Itai. Good to see you.